In this lecture, we'll learn how to use a function called getTemplatePath in order to organize our theme files and also make it more child theme friendly. So remember this hierarchy chart. Currently we only have the index.php template file, right? Imagine now we need to create an archive page that will be the default template for the author or the category or the data and tags and so on pages. So we can create each one of these separately, but let's now just create a general archive.php page to display all of these. So in my folder now I'm going to create a new file called archive.php. Let's save. And now if we go to some category, actually have the categories here. So let's go to this one. And now we have a blank page because we have a blank archive.php. So what we need to put in archive.php is mainly the same as index.php. We need to loop through the posts and display the pagination and the sidebar and pretty much the same, right? So let's copy this and paste it in archive. Now we have the only post with the this category, right? So maybe the only difference we want to add here is maybe add the category title before the posts. So let's go to the archive and let's add another row here, and it will span 12. So let's copy this and close it. And then this should be the page's header, so we can use a HTML5 header tag here and put the title of the category. So to do that we use a WordPress function called the archive title, and it takes before and after, so we can wrap it in an h1 tag. We can also add the description. Any category or tag can have a description, so we can add it below the title and wrap it in a p tag. So now we have the category or the archive title in the page here. So now we have two pages, the index. Let's open this in a new tab. We have the category page and the index page, and they're pretty much the same except that we have the title here. So we're kind of repeating some code here, and this is not a best practice. So what we can do is we can go to index and then copy the loop or cut it, and then create a new file. Let's call it loop.php. And then paste. And now we've created our first template path. So how to load this chunk of code now in the index.php? You might say we can use the PHP require or include functions, but you should never do that. WordPress have a built-in function called getTemplatePath, where you can load template paths. So it takes two arguments, the slug and a name. So let's ignore this name for now. We'll see this in a moment. And the slug is just the path of the file. So loop. And let's see now index.php, and it's the same. So what we can do is we can actually use this line here in the archive page and remove the loop from here. So that's a huge improvement, right? So let's see the category page now, and it's still the same. So using getTemplatePath allowed us to reuse our code here, so we didn't have to write the loop twice, and it's also child theme friendly. So I mentioned when using getTemplatePath that you shouldn't use PHP's require, include. And the reason is that getTemplatePath will look first for a file called loop.php in your child theme. And if it's not found, it will fall back to the parent theme. So imagine some other developer wants to modify something in your loop. Now he will have to only create a file called loop.php in his child theme instead of creating the whole archive page and copying this whole thing just to modify something in the loop. So let's try this. Let's add our child theme in the child themes folder into our workspace. And make sure you have your child theme active. And now let's create a new file and let's call it loop.php. And let's type some text. And let's see what happens. So as you can see, getTemplatePath will search for the loop.php in your child theme first. And if that's not found, it will fall back to your original parent theme, loop.php. So that will make child theme customization a lot easier for developers. So let's now talk about the second argument of getTemplatePath. So we've mentioned that the first argument is the path to your template. In some cases, you might need to consider this template as a generic template that can have a more specialized template. So for example, let's imagine you want to allow child theme developers to create different loop files for the archive and the index. Right now, the child theme developer will only have the choice to override the loop file, and this will get loaded for both the archive and the index. So to give more flexibility, you can add a second argument here, and let's call this archive, and the second argument here, and let's call it index. And what this will do is that it will give you the option to create a file called loop-index, and that's what will get loaded here. And if loop-index is not found, it will fall back to loop. And same for here. If loop-archive is not found, it will fall back to loop. And in the case of a child theme, getTemplatePath will search for loop-archive in the child theme, and if not found, it will search for loop.php in the child theme, and if that's not found, it will search for loop-archive in the parent theme, and then just loop in the parent theme. So let's try this. Let's in the child theme create a new file called loop-archive.php, and let's write child loop archive, and let's create another one. And let's call it loop-index.php, and let's write child loop index, and let's go now, and in the index we have child loop index, and in the archive we have child loop archive. So now we've given child theme developers the option to create a specific template for different template files like index and archive, or to just use the generic loop that will be used for all the files. So I think this is a great concept, and it can be very beneficial in your theme development. So let's see now where we can use this concept in a couple of places in our theme so far. So now in the loop.php in our parent theme, we can actually create a template path here. So in the post path, starting from the article tag, we can cut this and make this into a template. But now let's make it in a, instead of just putting it in the root folder, let's create a new folder and call it template paths. And we'll probably have different templates for different places in the theme. So let's create another folder inside this one, and let's call it post. And let's create a new file for our template and call it content. So this will be the post content. So let's paste our content here, and then let's load it using getTemplatePath. So let's open a PHP tag, and then getTemplatePath, and now we have our file inside template paths, and then posts, and then content. So let's save and check if we've done anything wrong. And let's remove the child theme templates here. And everything's still fine. So what we've done now will be very beneficial when we come to the post formats section. If you're familiar with post formats, it's a feature in WordPress that your theme can support that will allow users to choose different formats for the posts, and depending on that format, you will have to style your posts differently. So when we come to this, we'll make use of the second argument here to make some special templates for the content template. So we'll come to this later, but what we can do now is we can create a template file for this part. So let's cut this, and in our template parts folder in the post, let's create a new one called content-none.php. And this is a specific template for the post content when there are no posts. So let's paste now and save, and then load it using, can copy this line and then just add a second argument, none. So let's try this. Let's type maybe a category that doesn't exist, and we'll have no posts. So doing this will allow child theme developers to maybe override this template content none instead of just overriding the whole loop just to modify this part. So just to clarify this, let's quickly create a new folder in our child theme and call it template parts, and another folder post, and a file content-none, and let's type child none. And now this is what will be loaded when there are no posts. So finally, one other place we can use get template part for is our footer. So you see our footer has a lot of code, right? And if a child theme developer needs to, just override something very little here, he will have to copy this whole file and create a footer.php in the child theme. So let's create some template parts for different places here. So let's create a new folder inside the template parts for the footer. And inside of it, we will need to create two templates for the widgets and for the site info. So let's create two files, widgets.php and info.php, and we'll just copy the widgets part and save, and cut the info part in info.php. Just make sure you have the footer background variable in this file. So let's define it. And as I told you, these options will be dynamic later, so this will not be a problem. And let's finally load them using get template parts. Template files or template parts and footer and widgets, and we don't have a special template for this one. And let's duplicate and just type info, and we still have everything in place but now it's more organized and more easier for child theme developers to override just the info part or the widget part without having to recreate the whole footer. So I think that's it for template pods. Throughout the development, we'll try to use it as much as we can because it's a really useful feature. So see you in the next lecture.